If that's your Ferrari, I'll quit the force today." The white cop laughed so loudly that even the valet attendants turned around to stare. A few people near the entrance of the Beverly Crescent Hotel chuckled with him, eager to join the moment before they even understood it. I looked at the officer for a second, then down at the black Ferrari SF90 parked beneath the golden California sunlight. The paint reflected the palm trees above us like dark water. Beverly Hills always smelled expensive in the afternoon. Leather seats, designer perfume, freshly polished marble. But underneath all that luxury, some people still saw exactly what they wanted to see when a black man stepped out of a $70,000 watch and a $500,000 car. My name is Marcus Ellington. I'm 52 years old, and by that point in my life, I had learned something important about humiliation. The loudest people in the room are usually the ones most terrified of being wrong. Officer Daniel Brooks adjusted his sunglasses and smirked at me again. "Come on, man," he said. "You seriously expect me to believe this car belongs to you?" His tone wasn't curious. It wasn't professional either. It was the kind of voice people use when they've already decided who you are before you even open your mouth. Around us, phones slowly started rising into the air. Somebody near the valet line whispered, "This is going to be good." I could feel the attention spreading across the sidewalk like heat. The hotel entrance stood behind me with its massive glass doors and white stone columns. Tourists moved in and out carrying luxury shopping bags while a young guy in a red hoodie quietly started live streaming the whole thing from 10 feet away. Daniel pointed toward the Ferrari keys in my hand. "Let me guess," he said. "Your rapper friend let you borrow it for the weekend?" A few people laughed again. Small laughs. Nervous laughs. The kind people use when they know something feels wrong but don't want to stand out from the crowd. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I glanced toward his body cam. The little red light was blinking steadily against his uniform, recording everything. Good, I thought. Let it. Record. Daniel took my silence as fear. Men like him usually do. "License and registration," he said. "Now." I handed him my ID without a word. His smirk faded slightly when he read the name. Not because he recognized it. Because he didn't. Rich people were supposed to look a certain way to him. Tailored suits. Gray hair. Country club smiles. Not a 6'2" black man wearing old sneakers and a charcoal hoodie standing calmly beside one of the rarest Ferraris in Los Angeles. He looked back at me and laughed again, softer this time. "Marcus Ellington," he read aloud. "Well, Marcus, this should be interesting." I folded my hands in front of me and watched the reflection of the police lights dance across the Ferrari's windshield. Then I looked him directly in the eye for the first time since he walked over. "Officer," I said quietly, "you should be careful what you promise in public." The smile on his face didn't disappear completely, but for the first time since this started, it hesitated. Officer Daniel Brooks stared at my license for several long seconds, as if the plastic card itself had offended him. Then he looked back at the Ferrari again, slow and deliberate, like he was trying to force reality to rearrange itself into something more comfortable for him. Around us, the crowd kept growing. Beverly Hills had a strange way of turning embarrassment into entertainment. A woman wearing oversized sunglasses paused beside the hotel fountain pretending to check her phone while she listened. Two valet attendants stood near the curb whispering to each other. Across the street, somebody leaned halfway out of a white Range Rover to record the scene. Daniel handed my license to another officer who had just arrived. Younger, taller, nervous eyes. Officer Tyler Reed glanced between me and the registration papers before quietly asking, "What exactly are we looking for here?" Daniel smirked. "That is what I am trying to figure out." He motioned toward me without even looking in my direction. "Guy claims the Ferrari is his." Tyler looked down at the registration. His forehead tightened slightly. I could tell he already saw the problem. The paperwork matched perfectly. The VIN number, the plates, the registration address in Bel Air. Everything clean. Daniel did not care. Some people do not look for evidence. They look for confirmation. "Step away from the vehicle," Daniel told me. His voice had gotten louder now that more people were watching. "Why?" I asked calmly. "Because I said so." I held his stare for a second before taking 2 slow steps backward onto the sidewalk. The marble beneath my shoes reflected the late afternoon sunlight so brightly it almost hurt to look at. Somewhere behind me, the livestream kid muttered, "This cop is tripping." Daniel circled the Ferrari slowly, dragging out the moment. His reflection moved across the black paint in broken pieces. He crouched slightly to inspect the wheels, then stood again and folded his arms. "You know what the funny thing is?" he said. "Every week somebody in this city tries to pretend they belong somewhere they do not." I knew exactly what he meant. The words were polished enough to sound harmless, but the meaning underneath them was old. Older than Beverly Hills. Older than the Ferrari. Older than both of us. I remembered being 19 years old standing inside a luxury dealership in downtown Los Angeles, while a salesman followed me through the showroom asking if I was lost. I remembered my father gripping the steering wheel during traffic stops with both hands visible, because he believed surviving mattered more than pride. Some lessons get passed down in black families the same way recipes do. Quietly, carefully, like survival itself. Daniel suddenly looked toward the valet stand. "Anybody here actually see him driving this car?" One of the valets hesitated before answering. "Yes, officer. He pulled up about 20 minutes ago." Daniel gave a dry laugh. People valet stolen cars all the time. Tyler shifted uncomfortably beside him. Even he knew the accusation sounded ridiculous now. But Daniel had crossed too far into the performance to stop. Pride can make a man dangerous long before anger ever does. I glanced up at the hotel windows towering above us. Gold lights spilled across the glass like fire. Somewhere on the 32nd floor, a board meeting was waiting for me. 12 investors. 2 city officials. Millions of dollars hanging on a contract discussion scheduled in less than an hour. But down on the sidewalk, none of that mattered to Officer Daniel Brooks. All he saw was a black man beside a Ferrari. And in his mind, one of those things could not possibly belong next to the other. The air outside the Beverly Crescent Hotel had changed. I could feel it in the silence between conversations. People were no longer watching because they expected entertainment. Now they were watching because something felt wrong. Officer Tyler Reed lowered the registration papers slightly and leaned closer to Daniel. "Everything checks out," he said quietly. Daniel barely glanced at him. His jaw tightened beneath the afternoon sun. "Run it again," he replied. Tyler hesitated. "I already did." Daniel snatched the papers from his hand and stared at them himself, as if determination alone could uncover some hidden mistake. The livestream kid near the valet stand kept talking into his phone. "Yo, this is crazy. The paperwork is literally clean. Thousands of people were probably watching already. Social media moved faster than truth these days. Faster than dignity, too." Daniel suddenly looked back at me. "What do you do for a living, Marcus?" The way he asked the question made it clear he was not curious about my career. He was trying to calculate whether my existence made sense to him. I slipped my hands into the pockets of my charcoal hoodie and answered calmly. "Finance." A few people nearby exchanged glances. Daniel gave a short laugh. "Finance," he repeated slowly. "Right." I recognized the expression on his face immediately. I had seen it my entire life. It was the same look professors gave me at Stanford when they assumed I was an athlete before they saw my grades. The same look investors gave me 20 years ago when I walked into conference rooms they expected me to serve coffee in instead of lead. Some people never say the words out loud anymore. They do not have to. Their disbelief says everything for them. Daniel handed the papers back to Tyler with visible irritation. "Call dispatch again," he ordered. "Tell them to verify the owner." "Directly." Tyler nodded and stepped away toward the patrol car. Daniel remained near the Ferrari, studying me carefully now. Not with confidence anymore. With suspicion. There is a moment people reach when reality begins cracking underneath their assumptions. I could see him approaching it slowly. The hotel doors opened behind me, and an older couple stepped outside dressed for dinner. The man paused almost immediately when he noticed me. His eyes widened slightly in recognition before he quickly looked away. Daniel caught it. "You know him?" he asked. The man hesitated for half a second. "I think so." Daniel stepped closer. "From where?" The man adjusted his jacket awkwardly. "I have seen him on television before." Suddenly the crowd grew quieter. Not dramatic. Just enough for everyone to start listening more carefully. Daniel crossed his arms. "Television for what?" Before the man could answer, Tyler returned from the patrol car holding the radio against his shoulder. His expression looked different now. Tight. Controlled. "Dispatch confirmed ownership again," he said carefully. "Vehicle is registered directly to Marcus Ellington." Daniel stared at him without speaking. Tyler continued more quietly this time. "They also asked if this stop is being recorded by body cam." For the first time since this started, Daniel looked unsettled. Not afraid yet. Just aware. He glanced toward the blinking camera attached to his chest, and then toward the crowd surrounding us with phones raised in every direction. I watched his confidence shift beneath the surface like cracks forming under ice. But pride is a stubborn thing, especially when embarrassment starts arriving in public. Daniel forced a smile again and looked back at me. Registration proves ownership on paper, he said. It does not prove where the money came from. A few people in the crowd reacted immediately. Somebody muttered, "Oh no." Another person lowered their phone slightly, as if they suddenly understood this situation had crossed into something uglier. I said nothing. Sometimes silence exposes people better than arguments ever can. Daniel shook his head slowly while staring at the Ferrari. $500,000 car, he murmured. Hard to believe somebody just gets that lucky. I looked directly at him. Luck had nothing to do with it. And for the first time since he approached me, Daniel Brooks could not hold eye contact. Daniel Brooks looked away first. Only for a second. But in situations like that, a second is all it takes for power to shift. The crowd felt it immediately. People who had been quietly entertained 10 minutes earlier were now studying him instead. Watching him. Judging him. The livestream kid lowered his phone slightly and whispered, "This dude really messed up." Daniel heard it too. His shoulders stiffened beneath the dark blue uniform. Pride was still holding him upright, but barely. Tyler Reed cleared his throat softly beside the patrol car. "Maybe we should wrap this up," he said carefully. Daniel ignored him completely. He kept staring at the Ferrari as though the car itself had insulted him personally. Then his eyes moved back to me. Slower this time. More calculated. "Finance must pay pretty well," he said. I shrugged lightly. "Depends how long you stay in it." A few people nearby smiled at that. Daniel did not. Somewhere above us, the late afternoon sun reflected off the hotel windows and washed the entire sidewalk in gold. Beverly Hills always looked beautiful from a distance. Up close, it could become something colder. I had learned that years ago. Money changes how people treat you. But race changes how quickly they stop believing the money is yours. The hotel valet suddenly stepped forward holding a small black ticket book. He looked nervous speaking in front of the officers. "Sir," he said to Daniel, "Mr. Ellington comes here pretty often." Daniel turned sharply toward him. "And?" The valet swallowed hard. "And the staff knows him." Daniel gave a short laugh that sounded forced now. "That does not mean anything." But it did. Everybody standing there knew it did. A woman near the fountain suddenly looked at me more closely and gasped softly under her breath. "Wait a second," she murmured. Her friend leaned toward her. "What?" The woman pulled out her phone quickly, tapping across the screen before holding it beside her face. Then, her expression changed completely. "Oh my God," she whispered. The friend looked too. Both women stared at me with widening eyes. Daniel noticed immediately. "What?" he demanded. Neither answered him at first. Finally, the older woman spoke carefully. "You are Marcus Ellington, from Ellington Capital?" The sidewalk went quiet again. Not loud quiet. The heavy kind. The kind where everybody suddenly realizes they might have walked into a story much bigger than they thought. Daniel blinked once. "Ellington Capital," he repeated. Tyler Reed looked up sharply from beside the patrol car. Unlike Daniel, he recognized the name instantly. I could see it in his face. Most people in Los Angeles did. Ellington Capital owned office buildings, technology investments, medical real estate, and half the redevelopment projects downtown politicians loved taking credit for. Forbes had called me one of the most influential private investors in California 3 years earlier. I hated interviews, so most people only remembered the name, not the face, especially not when the face was black and dressed in an old hoodie. The older woman still looked stunned. "You donated the new children's wing at St. Catherine's Hospital," she said quietly. Someone else nearby added, "and the scholarship program for inner-city students." The mood around Daniel shifted instantly. Nobody was laughing anymore. Phones remained raised, but now they were pointed at him instead of me. Daniel's face slowly lost color beneath the sunlight. He looked back toward Tyler as though hoping for some kind of escape route to appear. Tyler avoided eye contact completely. For the first time since this started, Daniel Brooks finally understood the problem. Standing in front of him was not the Ferrari. It was the fact that his assumptions had been recorded from every possible angle. Bodycam, live streams, witnesses, hotel security cameras. And now the crowd was no longer watching a suspicious black man beside an expensive car. They were watching a police officer unravel in real time. Daniel Brooks tried to recover the moment the way drowning people grab at anything floating nearby. Too late. The crowd had already changed sides. I watched it happen in real time. The same people who had laughed with him 15 minutes earlier were now stepping farther away from him without even realizing it. Nobody wants to stand too close to public embarrassment once it becomes obvious. Tyler Reed shifted uneasily beside the patrol car and lowered his voice. Daniel, maybe we should end this. Daniel ignored him again, but the confidence was gone now. Every movement looked heavier, more careful, like he suddenly understood that every word coming out of his mouth could follow him for the rest of his career. The livestream kid checked his screen and let out a low whistle. 28,000 viewers, he muttered. This thing is blowing up. A woman near the hotel entrance shook her head slowly. He really thought this man stole his own car. Daniel heard that one clearly. His jaw tightened hard enough for the muscle near his temple to twitch. Then he looked directly at me again. If you are really Marcus Ellington, he said carefully, why dress like this? The question slipped out before he could stop himself. Honest. Raw. The real thought underneath everything else. Not why was I being detained. Not why was I questioned. Why did a wealthy black man not look the way he expected wealth to look? I almost smiled. Almost. Like what? I asked quietly. Daniel opened his mouth, then stopped. Because now the crowd was listening differently. Every sentence sounded dangerous. Tyler looked visibly uncomfortable standing beside him. The older woman near the fountain folded her arms. That is not a question you should be asking, she said sharply. Daniel ignored her too, but the pressure around him kept building. I glanced toward the hotel entrance as two black Escalade SUVs rolled slowly toward the curb. The valet attendants immediately straightened their posture. One of them whispered, "Oh no." The rear door of the first SUV opened and a tall woman in a navy business suit stepped out carrying a leather portfolio. Cynthia Warren, my chief legal officer. She spotted me instantly and walked forward quickly in 4-inch heels without breaking stride. Behind her came Harold Bennett, the general manager of the Beverly Crescent Hotel. His face looked pale before he even reached us. Mr. Ellington, Cynthia said calmly, we have been trying to contact you for the last 20 minutes. She glanced briefly toward Daniel and Tyler. Her expression did not change, but her eyes sharpened immediately. Harold Bennett stepped forward next, visibly nervous. Sir, I sincerely apologize for any inconvenience outside our property. Daniel stared at both of them in silence. The realization was settling deeper now. Not sudden anymore. Heavy. Slow. Permanent. Cynthia finally turned toward him. Officer, she said politely, is there a reason my client is being detained? Daniel straightened slightly. Routine investigation. Cynthia nodded once. Interesting. She looked toward Tyler. And what crime are we investigating exactly? Tyler looked trapped between honesty and loyalty. Before he could answer, the livestream kid spoke loudly from the crowd. Driving while black, apparently. Several people reacted immediately. A few nervous laughs. A few uncomfortable faces. Daniel's expression darkened instantly, but he said nothing. Because this time he knew better. Cynthia slowly removed a pair of glasses from her portfolio and slid them on. Good, she said calmly. Then the body cam footage should clear everything up very quickly. The words landed harder than shouting ever could. Daniel looked toward the blinking camera attached to his chest again. The tiny red light still flashed steadily beneath the California sun, recording every assumption, every laugh, every accusation, every moment. Daniel Brooks stood perfectly still for several seconds after Cynthia mentioned the body cam footage. Not calm stillness. The kind that happens when somebody realizes every possible exit has disappeared at the same time. Around us, the atmosphere outside the Beverly Crescent Hotel had completely transformed. The crowd was larger now. Hotel guests lingered near the marble entrance pretending to check messages while listening closely. Employees whispered near the valet stand. More phones pointed toward Daniel than toward me. Public opinion moves fast when embarrassment enters the room. Cynthia Warren opened her portfolio slowly and removed a tablet. I would like the badge numbers of every officer involved in this stop, she said calmly. Tyler Reed immediately answered first. Officer Tyler Reed. Badge 4172. Daniel hesitated just long enough for people to notice. Then he finally spoke. Officer Daniel Brooks. Badge 3118. Cynthia typed both numbers into her tablet without expression. Harold Bennett stood beside her, nervously adjusting his tie. The hotel manager looked like a man silently calculating how many important people were about to call him before sunset. I watched Daniel carefully. His posture had changed again. Less aggressive now, more defensive, but pride still lingered underneath everything. Men like him rarely admit mistakes quickly, especially not in front of a crowd. The livestream kid suddenly looked at his screen and laughed softly in disbelief. 50,000 viewers now. Somebody behind him asked, "Seriously?" He turned the phone around briefly. Hearts and comments flooded the screen faster than anyone could read them. Daniel noticed. Of course he did. Every police officer understands what cameras mean now, especially when the internet starts paying attention before the department does. Tyler shifted closer to him and lowered his voice. "Daniel, this is getting bad." Daniel snapped quietly. "I know that." But he did not sound angry anymore. He sounded tired. Cynthia finished typing and looked toward me. "The board meeting has been delayed another 30 minutes, she said. "Everyone is waiting upstairs." Harold Bennett quickly added, "We have prepared the executive conference suite for you, sir." Daniel's eyes flickered toward me again after hearing that. Executive conference suite. Board meeting. Legal counsel. None of those details fit the version of me he created in his head beside the Ferrari. That was the real problem. Not the car. Not the paperwork. The collapse of certainty. A black sedan suddenly pulled up beside the curb behind the police vehicles. The driver stepped out immediately and hurried toward us carrying a folded newspaper under his arm. Older man. Gray suit. Silver hair. I recognized him instantly. Councilman Richard Hale, one of the most influential city officials in Los Angeles. Daniel recognized him too. His face changed immediately. Hale walked directly toward me with concern written across his face. "Marcus," he said, "I just saw this online." He glanced briefly toward Daniel and Tyler before lowering his voice slightly. "Are you all right?" I nodded once. "I am fine." Hale looked toward Cynthia. "Has the department been contacted yet?" Cynthia answered calmly. "Not officially. We are still deciding how to proceed." Daniel swallowed visibly after hearing that sentence. Tyler looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. The councilman turned toward Daniel slowly. "Officer," he said carefully, "do you understand who this man is?" Daniel tried to answer professionally. "Sir, I was conducting an investigation." Hale stared at him for a long moment before replying. "Marcus Ellington funded 3 city housing projects when nobody else would touch them. He financed scholarships for over 600 students in this county. Half the businesses on this block survived because of his investment group after the pandemic." Silence settled over the sidewalk again. Heavy silence. Daniel looked down briefly at the pavement before glancing back toward me. And for the first time since this entire situation started, I finally saw it clearly in his face. Fear. Not fear of me. Fear of consequences. Fear of exposure. Fear of becoming the story instead of controlling it. The mood outside the Beverly Crescent Hotel no longer felt like a traffic stop. It felt like the final minutes before a public collapse. Nobody was laughing anymore. The live stream had spread far beyond Beverly Hills by then. I could see it on people's faces as they checked their phones. Recognition. Shock. Curiosity. A woman near the curb whispered, "My husband just texted me." This is everywhere already. Daniel Brooks stood near the Ferrari with his arms folded too tightly across his chest, as though posture alone could stop the situation from slipping away. But every few seconds his eyes drifted toward the body cam attached to his uniform. That tiny blinking red light had become the center of his nightmare. Cynthia Warren closed her portfolio slowly and stepped beside me. Calm. Precise. The way she always looked during negotiations worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "Internal Affairs has been notified," she said quietly enough for only me to hear. I nodded once. No anger. No satisfaction. Just acknowledgement. Around us, the city kept moving like nothing extraordinary had happened. Luxury cars rolled through the intersection. Palm trees swayed lightly in the warm California breeze. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter crossed the skyline above downtown Los Angeles. But inside that small stretch of sidewalk, everything had changed. Councilman Richard Hale glanced toward Daniel again. "This situation should have ended 20 minutes ago," he said firmly. Daniel swallowed hard before answering. "Sir, I was following procedure." Hale did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Procedure based on what exactly? Daniel opened his mouth, but no answer came immediately. Because the truth sounded ugly once spoken aloud. Procedure based on disbelief. On assumptions. On deciding a black man beside a Ferrari did not belong there before asking a single real question. Tyler Reed looked exhausted now. He kept shifting his weight awkwardly beside the patrol car, avoiding everyone's eyes. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. A black Mercedes pulled to the curb behind the Escalades, and another man stepped out quickly wearing a dark tailored suit. Benjamin Cole, senior editor at West Coast Business Weekly. He looked directly at me first, then at Daniel, then at the crowd of phones recording everything. Marcus, he said carefully, your office has been getting media requests nonstop for the last 15 minutes. Daniel closed his eyes briefly after hearing that. Just for a second. Long enough for me to realize he finally understood the scale of what had happened. Benjamin continued speaking quietly beside me. Several outlets already picked up the live stream. They are replaying the beginning of the stop. The beginning. The laughter. The Ferrari comment. The mocking tone. Public humiliation has a strange echo once cameras preserve it forever. Daniel looked toward me again, and this time, there was no arrogance left in his expression. Only calculation. Desperation. He was trying to determine whether this moment would cost him a suspension, or a career, or something even larger. Cynthia adjusted her glasses slightly. Officer Brooks, she said politely, would you like to explain why ownership verification was ignored multiple times? Daniel stared at her silently. She continued, or why assumptions regarding financial legitimacy were repeatedly implied after the registration was confirmed. Every sentence sounded colder because of how calmly she delivered it. Daniel looked trapped now, because there was no safe answer left. The crowd knew it too. Somebody quietly muttered, he is done. Another voice replied, all because he could not believe a black man owned a Ferrari. The words hung in the air heavier than shouting ever could. I looked toward the reflection of the city shimmering across the Ferrari windshield. 28 years earlier, I had started my investment firm from a rented office with broken air conditioning and exactly $4,000 in savings. Back then, bankers shook my hand without believing in me. Investors smiled politely while planning to say no. I remembered every closed door, every suspicious stare, every moment somebody assumed I was less educated, less qualified, less legitimate. Success had changed my bank account. It had never fully changed the assumptions waiting for me in rooms like this. Daniel finally spoke again, but his voice sounded smaller now. Mr. Ellington, he said quietly, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. I looked at him for several long seconds before answering. No, Officer Brooks. You started exactly where you wanted to. The silence after my answer felt heavier than everything that came before it. Even the traffic noise from Wilshire Boulevard seemed farther away somehow. Daniel Brooks looked at me like a man realizing the ground beneath him was not stable anymore. He opened his mouth twice before finally speaking. Mr. Ellington, I think there has been a misunderstanding. Cynthia Warren gave the slightest tilt of her head. Not amusement. Disappointment. A misunderstanding usually ends after ownership is confirmed, she said calmly. This continued long after that. Daniel looked toward Tyler Reed again as though hoping for support, but Tyler kept his eyes fixed on the sidewalk. Nobody wanted to stand beside him anymore. Not the crowd. Not his partner. Not even the hotel staff watching from behind the glass entrance doors. Public isolation happened slowly at first. Then all at once, the livestream kid checked his screen again and shook his head in disbelief. 80,000 viewers now. Several people nearby reacted quietly. One woman whispered, this officer just ruined his life over assumptions. Daniel heard that too. I could see it in the way his shoulders dropped slightly beneath the uniform. The confidence was completely gone now. All that remained was damage control. Councilman Richard Hale stepped closer beside Cynthia. Officer Brooks, he said firmly, I strongly suggest you conclude this stop immediately. Daniel nodded quickly. Too quickly. Of course, sir. His voice sounded careful now. Measured. Every word filtered through fear. He reached toward the registration papers in Tyler's hand and walked toward me slowly. The same man who had laughed loudly beside the Ferrari 20 minutes earlier now avoided direct eye contact while returning my documents. You are free to go, he said quietly. I accepted the papers without speaking. Around us, phones continued recording from every angle. Nobody wanted to miss the ending. Cynthia glanced toward Daniel's body cam again. We will be requesting preservation of all footage related to this stop, she said. Daniel nodded once. Understood. Harold Bennett finally stepped forward again, still visibly nervous. Mr. Ellington, your meeting attendees have all arrived upstairs. We also prepared private elevator access for you. I thanked him quietly. Then I looked toward the crowd surrounding the sidewalk. Some faces embarrassed. Some angry. Some simply exhausted by recognizing a story they had seen too many times before. Different city. Different uniforms. Same assumptions. The older woman near the fountain folded her arms tightly and shook her head at Daniel. You saw a black man in a hoodie. Beside an expensive car, she said softly. That was enough for you. Daniel looked down immediately. No argument this time. No sarcasm. Because she was right. And everybody standing there knew it. Tyler Reed finally spoke for the first time in several minutes. His voice sounded low and uneasy. Sir, he said to me carefully, I am sorry for how this situation was handled. I looked at him for a moment. Tyler had followed Daniel's lead from the beginning, but there was a difference between uncertainty and arrogance, between hesitation and humiliation. Thank you, I said quietly. Daniel remained silent beside him. The livestream kid lowered his phone slightly and muttered, This is bigger than the car now. He was right. It had stopped being about the Ferrari a long time ago. The Ferrari was just the excuse. Cynthia adjusted the strap of her portfolio and leaned closer to me. Internal Affairs already contacted the department captain, she said quietly. The footage review has been expedited. Daniel overheard every word. His face tightened again beneath the sunlight. Fear returned instantly. Real fear this time. Not fear of embarrassment. Fear of consequences becoming official. I slipped my registration papers back into my jacket pocket and looked toward the black Ferrari reflecting the entire city across its polished surface. 20 years building a company. 30 years surviving rooms where people underestimated me before I even spoke. Millions of dollars earned. Scholarships funded. Buildings developed. Families employed. And somehow, for one brief moment on a Beverly Hills sidewalk, none of it mattered more than the color of my skin. That was the part people watching online understood immediately. Not the Ferrari. The familiarity. I reached for the Ferrari door handle slowly while the crowd continued watching in complete silence. Nobody seemed eager to leave anymore. The story had become too real for that. Beverly Hills sunlight reflected across the black paint like liquid glass, and for a brief second I caught my own reflection in the window. Calm face. Gray beginning to touch my beard. Tired eyes behind controlled composure. People online probably. Imagine moments like this felt satisfying. They do not. Not really. Humiliation never becomes enjoyable simply because the audience changes sides. Cynthia Warren stepped beside me while adjusting the sleeve of her navy jacket. Your office said the live stream already passed 2 million views, she said quietly. I nodded once. Numbers no longer surprised me. Patterns did. The same story repeating itself in different forms decade after decade. Councilman Richard Hale shook my hand firmly before stepping back toward his sedan. Call me later tonight, he said carefully. The city is going to have questions about this. I understood what he really meant. The department would move fast now. Public pressure always accelerates accountability once cameras force institutions to pay attention. Daniel Brooks remained standing near the patrol car without speaking. His face looked older than it had 30 minutes earlier. Not physically older, spiritually older. Like reality had finally caught up to him all at once. Tyler Reed quietly removed his cap and wiped sweat from his forehead before climbing into the passenger side of the cruiser. He looked exhausted. Daniel still had not moved. Finally, after several long seconds, he stepped toward me carefully. Not confident anymore. Not authoritative. Just human. The crowd instantly raised their phones higher again. Everybody sensed a final moment coming. Daniel stopped about 6 feet away from me. Close enough to speak privately if he wanted. But there was no privacy left on that sidewalk anymore. Mr. Ellington, he said quietly, I am sorry. The words sounded strained coming out of him. Heavy, like he had never practiced saying them sincerely before. I studied his face for a moment. The same man who laughed at me beside the Ferrari now looked unable to meet my eyes for longer than 2 seconds at a time. Around us, nobody spoke. Even the livestream kid lowered his voice. Waiting. Watching. I could have embarrassed him then. Publicly. Easily. One angry sentence, and the crowd would have devoured him alive online for weeks. But anger is loud. Power rarely needs to be. I looked toward the body cam blinking against his chest. Then, toward the crowd. Then back at him. You know the worst part about this? I asked quietly. Daniel swallowed hard, but said nothing. I continued. You did not stop me because of the car. His eyes shifted downward immediately. You stopped me because somewhere in your mind, a man who looks like me could never belong beside something like that without explaining himself first. Nobody in the crowd moved. The silence became almost unbearable. Daniel opened his mouth slightly as if he wanted to defend himself, but the words never arrived. Because deep down, he knew I was right. I stepped closer to the Ferrari and rested one hand lightly against the roof. The car was never the issue, I said calmly. The issue was your certainty. Daniel's shoulders lowered slowly beneath the weight of the moment. Not dramatic, just defeated. Cynthia opened the passenger door for me while hotel employees watched quietly from the entrance. Somewhere nearby, another phone notification chimed. Another news alert probably spreading across the city. I looked at Daniel one final time before getting into the Ferrari. A mistake is forgetting someone's name, I said softly. What happened today was something else. Then I sat down behind the wheel and closed the door gently. The engine started with a low, controlled growl that echoed softly across the hotel driveway. Nobody laughed this time. As the Ferrari rolled away from the curb, I glanced once into the rearview mirror. Daniel Brooks still stood frozen beside the patrol car, while thousands of strangers continued recording him from every angle. The sunlight hit the windshield just right as I turned onto Wilshire Boulevard, and the city slowly disappeared behind me. But the look on his face stayed with me much longer.